So one thing is clear. In the Byzantine period, there was a massive church complex built here. One can see its remains spread around here, and especially the apse here in the back. And again, centuries later, in the days of the Crusaders, there was a church built reusing parts of the Byzantine church, especially its apses. Its massive remains can be seen on this side, and this is all part of it. And today, in modern times, there is a Catholic complex that is maintaining the place. And this is all because this site is said to be Emmaus, the site where Jesus appeared after his resurrection. What a significant location. But is it? What does archaeology say about this? What does the New Testament says about its location? Aha! So shalom everyone, welcome to another vlog by Danny the Digger, and this time within the series of Following Jesus in Jerusalem, I'm kind of expanding the term now to Following Jesus in Jerusalem and its vicinity, because we're kind of running out of sites in the old city or its perimeter, and following the sequence of events from the arrival on Mount of Olives to the resurrection and the exit from the tomb. The next events are recorded in the last chapters of the Gospels, and the Gospel of Matthew tells us that he appeared to the disciples. We will return to Jerusalem to suggest where that may have happened, but it is the Gospel of Luke, and only the Gospel of Luke, that tells us the following. Two men, yes, after the resurrection of Jesus, two men were walking towards Emmaus, and they notice a stranger joining them. They do not recognize who he is, but they tell him, have you heard of the miraculous events happening in Jerusalem where Christ has risen, went out of his tomb? And he stays quiet. They reach the city of Emmaus, they invite him for a meal, and when he cuts the bread, their eyes was open. It's Jesus! It's him! But he disappears. Emmaus will not be mentioned again by the Gospels or by the New Testament, but it is a significant place for marking where Jesus appeared for the first time, at least to the Gospel of Luke, after his resurrection. What a remarkable place. But wait, what exactly the text tells us, and what does archaeology tell us about this location? So for one thing, we have, as I said, only the Gospel of Luke, which should be then easy. You don't need to compare versions, yes, the four Gospels and the four versions, and try to explain any discrepancies between them. On the other hand, although it's just a single source, Luke gives us two important geographical indications. A, the name of the place. The name is Emmaus. It's definitely a Greek version for a Semitic place name, which probably meant Hamat. Okay, Hamat is a Semitic word or term used for a place where you have thermal springs. Hamat Gader, Hamat Veria, these places were known for their thermal springs, and indeed, not far from Jerusalem, there was such a site called Hamat, known for its hot springs. In fact, it was right here. It was right here, and we know so because around the corner there is, believe it or not, a fully preserved, completely intact bathhouse from Roman times. I hope to have enough memory to be able to go and show it to you as well. And furthermore, the Arabic village that used to be here till 1967, its name was Emmaus. So it was preserving the name of this location. So everything seems to fit. The Christian tradition, the location, the name preserved, but there is one problem. That problem is that, look, oh my God, the helicopter now. I think it's Boaz, I'll excuse him. Yes, sometimes I also arrange helicopter flights. I can only wish that I could include it also in my vlogs, but hey, we're working on getting a drone. Wait. Anyway, the Gospel of Luke also tells us, besides the name, it tells us the distance from Jerusalem. And that is where problems begin to emerge. Because the distance given by Luke is that between Jerusalem to Emmaus, it was, I quote, 60 stadia. Now, stadia, stadium, it's a specific distance that was defined in the Greek period to a distance of dashes, of quick runs. The problem is it wasn't really a standard by our scale. Some stadiums that we find in Greece are almost 200 meters long, some are less than 180 meters long. So let's say that the average is nearly 190 meters. So let's do 190 meters times 60. It's about 11 kilometers or 7 miles. And that's the problem. The distance between this site and Jerusalem is actually 29 kilometers or nearly 20 miles. It's just way too far compared to what the text tells us. And that is the source for the fact that several scholars have proposed alternative locations for Emmaus, which will be reviewed in my next chapters. And at the end of that series, I will also present a solution where Emmaus really is, and if it is here, how do you explain the gap problem? But wait for the end of the series. We are now going to focus on this specific site and the archaeology of it. But first of all, it's important to understand that Emmaus didn't retain the name Emmaus for all of its period. In the 3rd century, in fact, the Romans gave it another name, Nicopolis. And the famous 6th century map for the Christian pilgrims that was found in today's Jordan, it's called the Madama map, presents Emmaus as a city, but with only the name Nicopolis. Isn't that strange? Well, the person who combines the two places is Eusebius, a significant source from late 3rd century, who writes, Emmaus, whence was Cleopas. Cleopas is one of the persons in that dinner where they recognize Jesus, who is mentioned by the evangelist Luke. Today, it is Nicopolis, a famous city of Syria, Palestina. Yes, the whole region here was changed from Provincia Judea to Provincia Syria, Palestina in the 2nd century. So although these sources are from Roman and later Byzantine times, they are in some cases explaining why we should identify Emmaus here after all. Now let's switch to be behind the camera and show you what is the archaeology of the site. But let me tell you already now, 1st century around here, very scarce. What we have here is mostly evidence from later periods. However, there is in a surprising location, surprising finds from the 1st century that relate in a very, very interesting way to the tomb of Jesus. The tomb of Jesus in Jerusalem, not here. Well, how does it all make sense? Wait till the end. Okay, so moving around here, if we go through the Byzantine Crusader church complex, one can admire items like this beautiful Crusader period capital, perhaps turned into an altar later on. And we also have here some mosaic floors. Some of these mosaics are actually on display at the Humble Museum that the modern day Catholic complex has here. And some of them even bear inscriptions. Unfortunately, none of them tell us that this is really Emmaus. They all repeat the same theme that you usually find in ancient churches. You want to guess what it is? It's thanking the donor. Thank you for the Bishop Zacharias, son of Sergius, for raising the money, and so on. Unfortunately, even when we find ancient inscriptions in churches or synagogues for that matter, they usually don't tell us the name of the place. Here we also have another feature that at least indicates, yes, this was a church. Such items do not appear in such shape in ancient synagogues. This is a Byzantine period baptismal font. And this relates to the secondary church. The main church used to be right over here. Wait, I'll switch to the large angle and you can see the massive walls of the Byzantine church that were in such good condition that when the Crusaders came here, they incorporated it into their building. There's like 400 or 500 years gap between those two walls. Now later, some scholars were not sure if this is indeed Emmaus and if the Crusaders were worshipping, commemorating this specific event. There were some scholars that suggested that all of this is actually built to commemorate the legacy of the Maccabees. The city of Modi'in is not too far away from here. It was the maverick, the brilliant American scholar Edward Robinson, who said, no, this is probably relating to the site of Emmaus, although, as I said in the beginning, there is a gap between this location and the distance from Jerusalem to Emmaus. Several expeditions have worked here. The first significant one was a French team of Vincent and Abel in the 1920s. There was a Swiss expedition working here till recently. None of them, as far as I know, found clear evidence like an inscription to indicate beyond doubt that this is indeed the location. In fact, they didn't even find clear first century remains around here. This is now the apse of the Byzantine/Crusader era church, used for pilgrims coming here today for masses, for sessions of prayers to commemorate this event, presented here in this very Byzantine style of Jesus joining the meal of the people who invited him at Emmaus, cutting the bread. They recognize who he is. Ke epenoson auton. Yes, and they recognized him, as the text above in Greek says, but he moves on. He leaves Emmaus, and according to the other Gospels, goes up to the Sea of Galilee to meet the disciples. Okay, so this is pretty much all the architecture that you can see here. Look at this impressive apse, preserved all the way up to the ceiling. That is not something that happens often in Byzantine architecture. But as I said earlier, there's another reason to come here besides the architecture of the Byzantine Crusader period. And I am not necessarily referring to the beautiful blossom of this poppy field. Look at this. It is early February, but the poppies have started popping out. What a nice early spring image. But the reason I'm taking you up this way is because within the investigation done here in the early 20th century, Vincent and Abel also recorded something that indicated, for one thing, that this area where I'm walking now was already outside the limits of the first century city. How do I know so? Because here we have a tomb. And the style of the tomb and the shape of the tomb is from the time of the first century. Even the sign here is saying this in several languages. The reason that I like bringing people over here, let me try getting over the fence here to demonstrate this, is because many Christians have the image of the tomb of Jesus being a big tomb sealed by a big round stone. Well, you know what? The text never said it was round. The text only says that when Mary or the Marys came back on the Sunday, they found the stone that clogged, that sealed the tomb, being rolled away. It doesn't necessarily mean that it was round. And here we have a first century tomb entrance with the plug, the cork that would seal it, and someone indeed moved it away. In my opinion, this is what the shape of the entrance to the tomb of Jesus in Jerusalem should look like as well. Big round stones sealing tombs in the time of Jesus are extremely rare. There's maybe 4 examples of them in all of Judea, and they're always relating to royalty level kind of burials. Jesus was buried in the tomb of a rich Jewish man, Joseph of Arimathea, but he was an individual. He was not a high priest or royalty. I find it hard to believe that his tomb had a big rolling stone, as a lot of artistic renditions of the tomb also present. I believe it was something more like this. And let me stretch the limits of this rod. Yeah, we can even get a squeeze of the internal part of this cave. But there is another one where I hope to be able to actually crawl in to show you the interior. Hold on. Usually when you find one tomb, you'll find another one next to it. The Holy Sepulchre is no exception. If you have reviewed my review of the tomb of Jesus inside the Holy Sepulchre complex, there is indeed another first century tomb next to it in the property of the Armenian/Assyrian chapel. Here too we have one burial of the first century, and right next to it is another one. Here's a plan of it. This one has that clear kuchim style of burial, which we are so familiar in the days of Jesus. Jews would bury their dead either in such kuchim or put them the bodies on ledges parallel to the side of the cave. What type do we have here? Let's pretend we didn't see the map. Yes, this is a clear kuchim type of burial. Let me switch the camera. Now you can see the kuchim quite well. Each one would be to place a body. Oh, the camera is going berserk, or the gimbal actually. And a year later, after the meat decays and all you have are bones, the family would return and collect the bones into a small bone box, so that niche, that kuch, could be used again for more burials. And when we excavate such burial caves, if they are not looted, we often find both bones scattered around and a few bone boxes. Sometimes we even have the name chiseled on the bone box. One of them is actually very famous, found in an archaeological dig in the 1990s in Jerusalem. I will review it when I go to the Israel Museum. It is famous because it's a very high quality and it has the name, wait, let me switch here, and it has the name Yehosef Bar Kaifa. Yehosef Bar Kaifa. That means, wait, the camera is losing me. Hold on, just a second. Let's make sure the camera is happy. Okay, here we go. Now, the New Testament tells us that Jesus was interrogated by the high priest whose name was Caiaphas. But wait for that review. Yosef Bar Kaifa is apparently the very high priest that interrogated Jesus. There is another small bone box that is also very, very intriguing because it is rather simple, but it has the name on it chiseled as Yaakov Bar Yosef Ahui de Yeshua, James, son of Joseph and brother of Jesus. Wow! Is this the bone box of James, the brother of Jesus, that led the early Christian community in Jerusalem? Wait for that presentation. And while we're at it, there's another one, also very simple, of a poor guy whose name was Yohonatan ben Chagakol. And why is he a poor guy? Because this was excavated properly in 1968 in the French Hill of Jerusalem. And among the bones found in that bone box, there was one heel bone with a nail piercing it. Until recently, it was the only evidence ever found for crucifixion from Roman times. Recently, they just found another very similar example in England, but it's still only 2 examples in the whole world, in the whole Roman world, for crucifixion. So yes, there are many more subjects to cover. in Jerusalem and in its vicinity. So wait for my next chapters. And until then, make sure to hit like, to hit subscribe, to share these presentations by your family members, relatives, by the church. And by the way, the skies are open. Yes, it's kind of clouded right now, but the skies of Israel are open for vaccinated tourists. If you are considering, you or your congregation are considering coming to the Holy Land, let's just say that I know a good tour guide. And of course, for people who are supporting me, I am so grateful for this. I'm really beyond words for this, so many people giving me such warm feedback and also giving me financial support. There are still no tourists here, or barely any. It's really a difficult period, both for these sites, both for the people that cater to incoming tourism. Your support is deeply appreciated and also is enabling me to continue these vlogs. So God bless you all. Toda Rabba. And until the next chapter, Litraot.